According to early battlefield data, this moment may eventually be remembered as the exact point where this conflict entered a completely new and far more dangerous phase. And the most unsettling part is how little of it is actually being discussed. While many broadcasts were still repeating claims that Iran's strike capability had been degraded by nearly 90%, the sky above Israel was telling a very different story. For nearly 3 relentless hours, explosions, intercept trails, and incoming projectiles turned the night sky into a sustained battlefield. This was not a probing attack. This was not a warning shot. This was a synchronized heavy-lift ballistic assault. Iran deployed multiple layers of its missile arsenal in a coordinated operation aimed directly at the core of Israel's military infrastructure. Some of the projectiles involved carried payloads exceeding 1 metric ton of high explosives. Several of them were reported to be traveling at hypersonic speeds during the re-entry phase. Among them were the Fateh-class systems, operating alongside the heavier Khorramshahr ballistic platforms. And these weapons didn't just fly across the region. In several cases, they penetrated layers of what is widely considered the most advanced missile defense network ever deployed. Analysts say it may be the longest, heaviest, and most technically complex bombardment Iran has launched since the beginning of this war. For 3 agonizing hours, the sky over central Israel remained illuminated by sustained fire and interception attempts. Yet, at the very same moment, major media outlets were still reporting that Iranian strike capabilities had been almost completely neutralized. A contradiction raises a serious question. If the threat was truly reduced by 90%, then how did a barrage of this scale still reach the battlefield? The gap between the official narrative and the kinetic reality has never been wider. And understanding that gap may reveal where this war is actually heading. Because over the next few minutes, we're going to break down what really happened during this strike. We're going to look at the raw tactical data. We're going to examine the physics behind missile interception. And we're going to analyze the strategic shifts that many Western outlets are either overlooking or choosing not to emphasize. Because Iran didn't simply launch a handful of missiles that night. They effectively opened their entire playbook. Multiple tiers of their ballistic arsenal were deployed in a synchronized time-on-target strike package. Leading that wave was the Khorramshahr missile system. This is not a primitive rocket. It is a heavy-lift ballistic platform capable of carrying a warhead weighing between 1,500 and 1,800 kilograms. To understand why defense planners take the system so seriously, you have to look at its technological lineage. The design traces its roots back to North Korea's Hwasong-10. Technology transfers during the mid-2000s. But the detail that truly concerns military analysts is not just its payload. It's the propulsion system. The missile uses hypergolic liquid fuel. In simple terms, that means the missile can remain fully fueled on a mobile launcher for extended periods, hidden inside tunnels, concealed under camouflage, waiting silently until the launch order arrives. And once that order is given, the missile can be erected and fired in as little as 12 to 15 minutes. That capability dramatically reduces the window for satellite detection and preemptive strikes. By the time surveillance systems detect the launcher, the missile may already be airborne. And by the time interception systems calculate its trajectory, it is already descending toward the target. Complementing this heavy hitter was the Fateh-1 missile system, a weapon designed to behave very differently from traditional ballistic missiles. Unlike a predictable ballistic arc, this system uses a maneuverable re-entry vehicle that can alter its path during the final descent. Instead of falling straight toward the target, it shifts course, weaving and adjusting trajectory as it screams toward impact. In practical terms, that means interception algorithms suddenly face a moving target rather than a fixed path. If accurate, that capability allows the weapon to maneuver long before it reaches the terminal phase. And that single adjustment dramatically complicates the mathematics of missile defense, because interception systems rely heavily on predicting where a missile will be seconds into the future. When that prediction becomes uncertain, the entire defense calculation becomes unstable, each system operating at different speeds, altitudes, and trajectories, each one calibrated to stress a different layer of the Israeli and American defense network. This was not a single lucky projectile slipping through the shield. It was a carefully structured saturation strategy, and the objective appears to have been clear: overload the defensive architecture until something finally breaks. The targeting logic behind these strikes, because Iran's behavior here does not resemble a desperate force firing randomly. It resembles a military demonstrating layered operational capability. One of the most notable was the Hila Satellite Communication Center located south of Tel Aviv. This facility functions as a major communication relay used for military coordination, and according to the statement, it was targeted for the second time during this conflict. Additional strikes were reported against military positions near Be'er Yaakov. Targets were also reported in West Jerusalem. And infrastructure near Haifa was reportedly hit as well. But the strike package did not remain confined to Israel. According to Iranian statements, the operation expanded to include American-linked positions in Erbil and Iraqi Kurdistan. Even more significantly, the U.S. Navy 5th Fleet headquarters in Bahrain was reportedly included in the targeting list. However, even without them, the confirmed land-based strikes present a troubling enough picture. But the most important development of this entire update actually came from the other side. It came from something the Israel Defense Forces itself acknowledged during a press briefing, and that single admission may completely change how missile defense in this conflict is understood. Because according to the IDF briefing on March 10th, nearly 50% of the ballistic missiles launched by Iran since February 28th were equipped with cluster warheads. That single revelation immediately changes the entire strategic equation of this war. At a programmed altitude, the outer casing ruptures. And instead of one explosion, it releases dozens of smaller submunitions. Each bomblet carries several kilograms of high explosives, and each one becomes its own independent projectile falling toward the ground. These submunitions can scatter across an impact radius reaching nearly 10 kilometers. According to the Israel Defense Forces, Iran has been deploying these cluster-armed missiles almost daily since the escalation began, and that shift directly attacks the basic logic of missile interception. Many people assume that once an interceptor hits a missile, the threat disappears. That assumption works for conventional warheads, but cluster munitions were designed to defeat exactly that kind of thinking. Israel's layered defense network, including the Arrow system, David's Sling, and the Iron Dome, remains one of the most sophisticated missile defense architectures ever built. But these systems are primarily designed to track and destroy a single incoming warhead following a predictable ballistic path. Cluster warheads change that equation entirely. If the interceptor destroys the missile before it disperses its payload, the threat is neutralized. But if the warhead opens at altitude first, the situation becomes far more complicated. One incoming target suddenly becomes dozens of independent projectiles, each moving along a slightly different trajectory, each requiring its own interception solution. No missile defense network currently deployed on Earth has the tracking capacity to intercept dozens of bomblets simultaneously from a single warhead. And there is another darker complication rarely discussed outside military briefings. Even when a cluster-armed missile is intercepted successfully, the kinetic impact can rupture the casing rather than vaporize it. When that happens, the bomblets may scatter anyway, turning a successful interception into an uncontrolled dispersal event. The defense system operates on binary math, hit or miss. Cluster munitions operate on distribution. One warhead can release 20 or more bomblets across a lethal area several kilometers wide. Evidence from the ground strongly supports this assessment. And that fact alone suggests the operational gloves may already be off. Yet the interception challenge is only one dimension of this unfolding situation. There is another layer to the strategy emerging here, a layer that military planners sometimes call the blindness strategy. Instead of attacking only the targets being protected, the strategy first attacks the systems that make interception possible. Radar networks, satellite communication relays, early warning detection infrastructure. On March 11th, the New York Times published a detailed analysis using satellite imagery and verified video footage. That analysis identified at least 17 American military-related facilities damaged across the Gulf region. Several of those facilities had reportedly been struck more than once. Satellite images revealed damage near radar domes and satellite dishes. Some were positioned close to AN/TPY-2 radar systems, the tracking backbone used by THAAD missile defense batteries. Those radars act as the eyes of the interception network. If radar tracking is disrupted, interceptor missiles cannot calculate their firing solutions accurately. Senior defense officials reportedly acknowledged that Iran had adapted its targeting strategy. Instead of simply firing missiles at defended locations, they were striking the support systems that make defense possible. In intelligence language, officials described the results as defying expectations. That phrase usually carries a very specific meaning. It means the original assumptions were wrong, and it means the threat was underestimated. The Pentagon has already admitted it does not have a complete picture of how many Iranian launchers remain operational, which means the real capacity behind these strikes may still be unclear, which means the consequences of this conflict may soon reach far beyond the battlefield itself. And that brings us to the most important question of all: who is actually controlling the tempo of this war right now? Because while both sides claim escalation dominance, the reality on the ground suggests something far more complicated. The most devastating barrage of the war arrived only days after officials claimed the threat had already been neutralized. That contradiction may reveal the true nature of modern conflict. Political narratives often move slower than battlefield reality, and sometimes the gap between those two worlds becomes the war itself.